All right. Hello, everyone. Can we all hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Oluwatobi. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back again to the mentees and welcome to class, to our mentors for our second class for today. Right. Without wasting any time, we'll be heading straight to business, but I would like to kindly ask that those who are in the class can please reach out to mentees that are yet to join in so that we can have a session that is more full. We can have more people in class and we can have a very interactive session. Welcome back to class once again. This is week 6 of our Jiipcc mentorship and internship program, right? And this is our third combined class that we are having. Our topic for today is, I think, something that should concern everybody, right? Everybody that is interested in money and interested in learning or just knowing how to raise capital, and that is fundraising for startups, right? So that is our topics. That's our topic for today, and we have a list of mentors. I can see some of them already on the call, who will be taking us through the topic for today. So moving on, like we already started announcing and we've been announcing about the free legal clinic, Jiipcc Academy free legal clinic for creatives, entertainers, athletes, innovators, and startups, right? You can get a 20 minutes consultation with our professionals and you can also submit your contracts for review. Please, I would like to kindly like to just indulge us once again to please share, spread the word about what we are doing, right, so that we can have people benefits from this initiative. Thank you. And then moving on, I will just be reading through the mentor's profile. Uh, Not to waste time, I'll be giving just a highlight of their profile. If you want to know more about our mentors, please, you can kindly follow us on LinkedIn. The flyers are also posted there, so you can always look through to know more about the mentors. Right. So our first mentor for today, who is already on call, is Mr. Oluwatobi Onamade. Sorry, sir, if I didn't pronounce your name very well. Mr. Oluwatobi is a passionate Nigerian dedicated to driving positive change in Nigeria and Africa through youth development with a diverse background in private, public, and NGO sectors. He is a strategic leader committed to fostering innovation and empowering individuals. Owulabi currently works with Faith Foundation Nigeria, foremost business incubator and accelerator. He plays a pivotal role in shaping the organization's strategic direction and fostering its financial sustainability. As he continues to chart his path, Owolabi remains a beacon of inspiration for those who share his vision of a better Nigeria and a better world. Thank you so much, Mr. Owolabi, for joining us. We are happy to have you in class. Moving on to our next mentor, to those in the IP group who are no stranger to Mr. Max. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. Mr. Max Ikombe is our next mentor. Mr. Max Ikombe is the founder slash principal of Everlaw Associates. He works extensively in the field of arbitration, ICT technology law, and intellectual property. Max is a facilitator on the annual Information Technology and Law course of the Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies since 2016. He has trained in advanced intellectual property law courses at the World Intellectual Property Organization Academy, and he is an accredited agent of the Nigerian Trademark and Patent Registry and has conducted IP registration business there since 2010. Thank you so much, Mr. Max. It is nice having you in a class other than IP and entertainment business and law. You are welcome to today's class. Thank you so much for joining in. And then last but not least, our third mentor for today is Rafiyat Dabiri. Dabiri. Sorry, Ma, if I didn't pronounce your name very well. Sorry about that. Rafiyat Dabiri is a dedicated and results-driven program manager with a passion for philanthropy and social impact, currently serving as the fundraising manager for WAQF, manager of Mubarak WAP Foundation. Rafiat brings over a decade of experience in project management across various sectors, including agriculture, food production, and non-profit um, organizations. Refia's unique blend of project management skills, philanthropic experience, and passion for social impact makes her a valuable contributor to discussions on effective non-profit management, sustainable development, and innovative approaches to addressing societal challenges. You're welcome, Ms. Refiat. We are also happy to have you in class. Please, once again, I would like to encourage our mentees, if it's possible, you can kindly turn on your videos. You can invite more people to join in the session, right, so that we can have a full class. Welcome once again to our mentors. Not to waste any further time, we would just like to give the floors to our mentors. 20 minutes each. We kindly ask that our mentors, if it's possible, to try as much as is within their power to stick within the time frame allocated, so that we can hear from the other mentors, and then we can hear from our mentees, and then we can have an extensive period for questions and answers. So moving on, I think based off of just moving on. I would like to give the floor firstly to Ms. Rafiat, right? And then we'll have our other mentors join in subsequently. Ms. Rafiat, you're welcome to class. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you very much for having me. Am I audible enough? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Also, thank you very much for having me. And I'm excited to be amongst this. I had the profile for the other mentors and I'm a bit intimidated. So I hope I can deliver appropriately. So who is going to be sharing the slides? We're going to be talking about fundraising, but mostly from the development sector and from the philanthropic point of view. So when you're ready, when you're ready, let me know. Okay. Okay. All right, let's go. So fundraising, the materials that we're going to be using for this session are from the fundraising school. The fundraising school is part of the Indiana University, and it is the only university program that deals with fundraising as a degree or as a certificate course in the whole world. So the materials and the information I'm going to be sharing with you for this session are from the fundraising school. Fundraising is, okay, next slide, please. Okay, you skipped the session guide. This is just a little session guide for the mentees to track what we're going to be discussing in this session. You know, outline your primary learning goals, maybe 2 or 3 bullet points, what exactly it is that you want to take away from this meeting. And as we move on, you can now pick 1 or 2 themes that resonated with you, that you want to remember this session for. And then as we move on, you will have a time to pick out the important resources that you got from the session. So this is just like a guide for you to be able to pick out some important items from the session. Next. Okay, so fundraising is a multidimensional discipline. Of course, we know that it's not just for the philanthropic sector, even though that's what I'm going to be focusing on. It's also in other sectors, but for today, I'm going to be focusing on fundraising for development purposes, fundraising to be able to create positive and positive social impact. Okay, so the first thing that is very important for us to note is that in our environment, this is a developing world, we don't really understand that fundraising itself needs structure. You know, when people hear fundraising, especially when it is for nonprofit work or when it's for development work, they believe, okay, you just go and look for people that have money and go and meet them and ask them to give you money because you want to create impact. No, it doesn't work like that. So we're going to look at it from the structure. The structure for fundraising is what we call the fundraising queue. Next slide, please. Are you there? Okay, awesome. So we all know what a cube is. A cube is a square box that has 6 sides. This is what we use in fundraising to remind us, to keep reminding us about the key elements of fundraising. Okay, it has 6 sides. The top side is the management. The left side, I think, the top left side, yes, left side is the institutional readiness. The other side is human resources. And then we have 2 other sides, which are the markets and vehicles for fundraising and the dynamic functions. So these are the 6 sides of the fundraising cube. Management, your institutional readiness, human resources, the markets, vehicles, and dynamic functions. So for the constraint of time, I'll just explain this briefly. Management basically is your board. You know, the top of any management is the board. So how involved is your top management in your fundraising activities? How involved are they? Have they put down the proper structure, the requisite structure for you to be able to carry out fundraising activities? The next is institutional readiness, and that is just the structure. People tend to forget that as an organization, you need to have put systems, you need to have put processes in place for you to be able to achieve any kind of success. So institutional readiness is basically your vision, your mission, your structure. Does everybody involved in this organization, your management, your volunteers, your staff, do they understand what it is that you're doing? Are they on the same page with you? Do they understand your vision? Have you been able to get buy-in from them? You know, are they ready to advocate what it is that you're trying to push? Are they ready to do advocacy for you? So that is your institutional readiness. It's not, you cannot jump it. You just have to make sure that everybody is on the same page from top to bottom for you to be able to have effective fundraising activities. The next one is the human resources. As I mentioned earlier, your human resources is from the constitution of your board. People that are on your board, have you recruited board members with extreme care? Then your staff, your executive staff, the management staff, and then your volunteers. You need to regularly motivate participation of all these elements of your human resource aspects. You need to constantly motivate them, constantly remind them, you know, about what it is that you're doing. And experience has demonstrated that the weakness in most institutional readiness is from the human resource aspect, because leadership is poor, the structure is weak. It affects eventually what you're going to deliver when it comes to seeking funds and getting donors. And then your markets. Markets basically means the people that you cater to. Who are your constituencies? You know, who are the people that you want to talk to get money from? And who are the people that you are giving, you're serving with those money? Those are your markets. Now, the major markets that we have in fundraising are, we have corporate bodies, we have individuals, we have foundations. And experience has shown that individuals are the most flexible when it comes to fundraising. You know, for corporate bodies, you have different organizations that focus on specific sectors. For example, if you're going to a bank, you want to talk to a bank, that, you know, their CSR focuses on education. You don't go and talk to them about widow welfare. You don't go and talk to them about orphan welfare. So that is what we mean by knowing your markets and knowing the particular vehicles and the message, the kind of communication that you want to achieve with them. Next slide, please. The next part of the cube is the vehicles. These are basically the techniques that you're going to use to enlist your support. Some people, in conjunction with some vehicles, work hand in hand. For example, you're trying to get support for your annual fund, what you need to run your organization for a year. And at the same time, you need major gifts, probably because you have a capital campaign that you're running, you're trying to build a school, and you're trying to get scholarships. And at the same time, you need to function, you need to operate. So these are 2 different things that you're going to be needing to raise support for. So the type of vehicle that you will enlist to raise money for your annual fund is different from what you are going to enlist to raise money for your capital campaign. So you have to match this for you to be able to have efficient fundraising. And then the last one is the dynamic functions. This is where everything comes together, the culminating factors from the management to the human resources, the markets, the vehicles, they all need to come together for you to have dynamic functions. No part can be left out. So this is that about the fundraising cube. Now we'll move to the fundraising cycle. Okay. Excuse me. Yeah. The fundraising cycle is basically how marketing techniques come together for you to have efficient fundraising. It is a very tight cycle. It has about 14 stages, but every step is important. Every step is very important in your fundraising efforts. Are we together? I seem to feel like I'm just going on and I'm talking to myself.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, with you.
yes, we are.
Awesome.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Okay, so the fundraising cycle, the most and first important part of the fundraising cycle is your case. What are you doing? Why are you doing what you're doing? That is your case. Your case, you have to examine your case and be sure that it is needed. If your case is not necessary, or if your case was not present, if you did not have this case, what will the world be like? You have to check that. If this case comes into fruition, if you're successful with your case, what will the world be like? You know, with or without your case. So you have to examine your case properly. Your case is your why. It is the major, it is the mission. It is why you are doing what you are doing. So what are the goals of the organization? Why should anyone support your organization? What are the benefits that will accrue if we support your organization? What are the things that we will miss if we don't support your organization? So this is what we call a fundraising, your case for support. This is the thing that you need to build your case. It is your mission, it is your why, it is why you are here, it is why you need support. You know, there are so many things that you have to examine when you're building your case for support. So your case is very, very important. This is like the foundation of why you're doing what you're doing. Next thing is to analyze your market requirements. We have talked about markets initially. Now, an organization's case and objectives needs to be tested against the market's wants and needs. As I said, you have to align your specific ask to a specific market. You have to know if the market you are talking to or if the particular sector you're talking to aligns with what it is that your organization wants to do. So do the markets, do they have a specific problem that they want to solve? Let me give an example of a corporate body for now, or maybe an individual, a philanthropist. You know, does his philanthropic motive, does his philanthropic desire align with your organization's mission? Now, this is, you need other alignment for you to be able to achieve any kind of success. I am, for example, my organization is working, my mission is education. I'm trying to reduce the amount of out-of-school children in another part of Nigeria. And then I want to go and talk to Dan Tata's daughter or Dan Tata himself. But Dan Tata has been doing most of his philanthropic activities in drug abuse because he probably has experience in that aspect. You see that it doesn't align. But in your communications, you can somehow, you know, tailor your communications to be able to see, to be able to find a merger, somewhere where those missions align. You know, yes, I'm trying to get children out of the streets. He is trying to reduce drug abuse. He is trying to get, you know, work with organizations that talk about drugs and staying away from drugs. Somehow I can be able to align those missions. I can market or I can talk about my mission in such a way that he will be able to key into it. But ultimately, the best thing is for you to find a market that aligns with your mission. That is where you get the efficiency and effectiveness that you require. The next slide, the next part of the cycle is your needs statement. You need to have a needs statement, you know, plan your needs statement 1, 2, 3 years ahead and do in-depth planning. Be sure that what your mission is actually fulfilling a need in that community, in that society. So do your planning, your financial planning, the resources that you will need, how you're going to get those resources, the people that are going to participate, the people that you need, human resources that you need. So your needs statement has to be comprehensive. It has to have everything that you need for you to achieve your mission. So that is what your needs statement is. The next part of the cycle is for you to define your objectives. Translate your mission and goals into specific and measurable solutions. Your objectives need to become how you're going to achieve the why. And the objectives must be realistic and achievable so that your organization will be on the path to achieve that mission. And programs have to be objective as well. The next part of the cycle is to involve volunteers. The volunteers are not just people that you recruit to join your work, or the mission that we have down here, that volunteers are people that work for you without pay. No, your volunteers start from your board, your management, your staff that you are paying, and then eventually if you get interns or people that are ready to donate their time free of charge. So your volunteers you have to be on the same page. They have to key into this mission. They have to be hands-on. They have to participate. You need to have bought the buy-in. You need to have gotten their buy-in, and for them to be able to understand what the mission is all about and how you're going to achieve it. And you need to measure their involvement regularly, continuously. You don't just have one big kickoff event where you have told them what the mission is and what your goals are and how you're going to achieve them, and then believe that 3 months from now or 6 months from now, they'll still remember what that is. No, it has to be a continuous thing. You have to keep reminding them. You have to keep the communication flowing. And for them to understand that fundraising is a responsibility of everybody, from the governing board to the executive staff to volunteers. It is everybody's responsibility. So number 6 is validating the need statements. The board and other key volunteers must continually study and validate these need statements. They must prove that they are defensible and credible. You don't just assume. People cannot just assume that whoever it is you are talking to, members of your organization, outsiders, your constituents, or your market, you can't just assume that they understand what you're trying to do. So as I said earlier, it has to be a continual process. You have to keep reminding people about what it is that you're doing, and that is your need statement. The next one is to evaluate the gift markets. It's just like what we did earlier with analyzing the markets, but this time now it is for you to be specific about your ask, how you're going to ask. For now, we have been going around the circle. We have gotten like 7 stages. We still have 7 more to go, but we have not asked. You can't ask now. These are all the things that you need to do before you make your ask, before you solicit for whatever the gift is that you're soliciting for. So these are all the stages that you need to pass through. Now, evaluating your gift markets, you have to be able to know if that person or whatever market it is that you are looking at to give you the support that you require, are they able to give you that support? Are they willing to give you that support? Yes, your missions align. Yes, their motives align with your mission. But do they want to work with you? Are they able to give you 10 million naira for the project that you're doing? So these are all the analysis that you need to do. You need to evaluate all these things from your gifts market. And then the next one is selecting a fundraising vehicle. So as I said earlier, you have to tailor each vehicle to each market. You have to know which vehicle is perfect for each market. Let me give an example. We have what we call the fundraising pyramid. The fundraising pyramid is, a pyramid triangle. And at the base of the pyramid, which is the biggest part of the pyramid, is where we have the donor base, like everybody, people that are donating 2 naira, 1 naira, 3 naira to you. The regular donors, not the major donors, not the campaign donors. This is where you have the regular donors. So now, that is one market. Your base donors are one market. What's the vehicle that you're going to use? What fundraising vehicle are you going to use to get their support? Is it one-on-one? Do you have one-on-one meetings with them? Do you organize a luncheon with them? No, this kind of vehicle cannot work. For that kind of base, for that kind of level of fundraising, you probably need like maybe a fundraising event, somewhere where you can call a large number of people, or you need a campaign, a social media campaign that runs for like 2-3 days, where you can get people through the social media platforms and all that. So this is what we mean by selecting the perfect fundraising vehicle. You have to check which vehicle fits perfectly with which market, do your cost benefit analysis, weigh what it is that you have to spend and what you're hoping to get back in return, and do all this background work. And then the next part of the cycle is identifying potential giving sources. Well, this is almost like analyzing your market, but you have to develop a specific list of prospective donors. The prospective donor development is based upon identifying and using data to get the information about each donor and what their interests are, what their giving capability is, and whether you'll be successful soliciting them. So after all this, you now prepare your fundraising plan. You prepare your fundraising plan that has all this information that you have gathered, your markets, your vehicles, your everything that you have been doing. Your fundraising plan has all this. Now, fundraising plan has to involve everybody from board to down. Your fundraising plan has your case for support. The first thing we talked about, it has your markets, it has your needs statement, it has the vehicles that you use, they're going to use to talk to solicit each market. Your plan has all these things that we have talked about in the last 9 steps. So this is what the plan should be. And a plan is not static. It's not once we have done all that work, that is it. No, a plan it's flexible, it evolves, it changes with time. New information, new plans, new needs, things happen. So your fundraising plan should be dynamic. It should be flexible enough to keep changing. And then you also develop your communications plan. It is something like how I talked about vehicles. So how are you going to be reaching out to your major donors, your base donors, your highest major gift donors? Different ways you're going to be reaching out to them. So you develop a communications plan, effective communications plan, or how you're going to be talking to each and every person. So if you're trying to organize a social media campaign for your business, you know that your major gift donors, people that are going to give you 10 million naira a year, are not going to be on social media. So how are you planning to communicate with them? Are you going to be doing it through email, through direct calls, through luncheons, through lunch dates? How are you going to communicate with every level of your donors? So this is what you need in your communications plan. And after that, activating the volunteer corps, I think that is basically self-explanatory, building your volunteer army, getting them involved, giving them the education and the information that they need and all that. So, and then we come to the second to the last part, which is eventually you can now ask, you can now make your ask, you can now solicit the gift. You are ready to solicit your gift now after doing all this pre-work. So all the 12 cycles have brought you to this point. This is the culmination of all the preparation that you have done. Gifts from base donors, from major donors, from your board. This is the culmination of where you make your ask. If you have done all the background work properly, if you have done it the way you're supposed to have done it from the last previous 12 steps I made, this should be like a walk in the park, and you will know at this point whether am I getting what I'm asking for or not. At this point, you should have your answer. And after soliciting the gift, the next part of the cycle is to steward and renew that gift. Stewardship basically means how you continue to build relationship with your donor after you have gotten what you want. You're going to keep up communication with them. You're going to show them progress reports on what you did with the money, with the funds, how the impacts that it has made. You are going to keep up. You need to keep up communication with them. You're not just getting your gift, sending a thank you letter, and that's that. Moving on to the next. That is wrong. We call that donor abuse. So you need to steward your gift. Keep them in the loop. Keep communication lines open. Keep them up to date. Give them progress reports. This way, you are building trust. You are building credibility, and then you can renew the gift. They will definitely want to renew the gift if you have stewarded properly. So this brings us to the end of the fundraising cycle. At this point, I want to pause. I think I still have like 10 minutes. Okay, so I have some explanations here in the slide for the different parts of the cycle. Okay. So I think I have about 10 minutes more. Do I? Or 5 minutes? I just want to see.
You have there about 5 minutes more.
Okay, in that case, then we'll move the questions to the end of the session. Next slide. Okay, so the next slide is, it's just a further explanation about what we're talking about and markets and the vehicles, city donor segments. The donor segments, as I said, are into individuals, corporations, and foundations. How we understand foundations in the literal meaning, in the real meaning, is different from what we have down here in Nigeria. Foundations, most of the time, are actually family-based, trust-based. People set up foundations to be able to give money, not to be able to ask, not to ask for money. You understand? So foundations normally fund
charitable projects, they fund philanthropic work from other people that are executing them, from the other people that are doing the groundwork. But here in Nigeria, we have a situation where it's the foundation that is asking you for money to do their work, which that's not how it works. So these are the different donor markets that we have. We have individuals, corporations, and foundations. Most of the time, you'll find that whoever the founder of the foundation is, or whose trust that foundation is, has a specific constituency, has a specific sector that they want their money to go to. You know, most of the time they are only focusing on education or focusing on scientific research, they have focuses. So that's why we don't usually refer to them as very flexible. Human beings, individuals are the only ones that are flexible. You know, as I said earlier, somebody may be doing all his philanthropic work in drug abuse, you know, prevention of drug abuse, but you want to talk to him about educating out of school children. You can still align those missions. You can still find a way, and he will buy into what you want to do, because human beings are flexible. So individuals are like the most flexible donor markets that we have, then foundations and corporations. So this is like a breakdown of the donor markets in Nigeria as at 2022. Is that 2020? Yeah. So that graph is there. So the final thing I want to talk about, my time is up, is the donor bill of rights. That's the last slide. In everything that you do, in all your fundraising activities, in all your fundraising efforts, we should understand that the person doing the support, the person giving you the support, the person, your donor, also have rights with you that you need to uphold. Because one thing that we have found that's very common, prevalent around here is donor abuse. Like, people abuse their donors. You only remember your donors when you need something from them. You only remember your donors when you have a project that you want to execute, which is wrong. So the donor bill of rights is what we call the 6 hours of fundraising. The right person asking the right prospective donor for the right gift, for the right program, at the right time, in the right way. So your donor has expectations from you, and you try as much as possible to fulfill those expectations so that you can renew your gift, so that your relationship, you build a relationship and it's ongoing and not just a one-time thing. So this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ma, for that very insightful session from you. Yeah. So we will have a question and answer segment later on in the class, after we've had all our mentors speak to the slides and then give their presentations. We've taken mentees' presentation, then we would have a question and answer segment where we'll give you opportunities for those who are on the call to ask questions to our different mentees, to our different mentors rather, and they can help answer. So thank you very much, Ms. Rafiat. We really sincerely do appreciate. So moving on to our next, we're moving on to our next mentor for today. We have Mr. Owolabi. We'll be having Mr. Owolabi for 20 minutes. So just give us his discourse for today, and then we'll have Mr. Max Kombe.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Let me take away the AI. So it's my face that is officially showing. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Rafiat, rather. Pardon me. Please, do you mind if I share the screen from my own end for easy navigation?
That's fine.
Okay, so good afternoon. This is to just confirm the time. This is 2:33. So 20 minutes. I should stop at 2:53. I'll be right on time. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Miss I've had sort of like made some of the jobs I have, or some of the things I want to say, quite easy. You know, she went into much detail about what fundraising is. Like I said, my name is Owolabi Onamade, as I've been introduced earlier on, and I work for Faith Foundation. Faith Foundation is Nigeria's foremost incubator and accelerator. 24-year-old organization, and I do fundraising for the foundation. Now, to speak to my slide, fundraising in itself, and I wanted to sort of like start the conversation with a sort of like a definition, so to speak to about it. What is fundraising? When the term is being used, what comes to mind? And you could really just in the chat box type what when you hear the word fundraising, what comes to your mind first? What's the first thought that you have? What's the first thing you think about when you're fundraising? I'll be looking to get one or two persons, please. You could help me quickly because of the short little time I have, so I'm able to cover everything I want to speak about. So in the chat box, anyone could just literally just tell me what, when you're fundraising, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And I'm looking at the chat box, hoping to see someone typing something. As I'm also looking at my time. Oh, someone said, oh yes, Ima Bong says maybe secondary school students trying to get money for a club or event. Good, that's good. Any other person apart from Ms. Brown, gathering money for a project. Thank you. Toye, I hope I pronounced that well. Crowdfunding, Abiola, thank you, beautiful. Just seeking of financial support for a particular purpose. Thank you very much, Juliet. Very beautiful. I see we literally, fundraising is a process of getting money support for a project. We literally do not require so much training at all because we sort of understand what fundraising is. And yes, you can keep coming, but just to move ahead in terms of time for me. And I try to say, I gave like a brief definition or to it to go about it. That fundraising is a process of seeking and gathering financial contributions or investment from individuals, organizations, or institutions to support a specific cause, project, or business. It involves creating strategies that Ms. Ryder was able to help us, walk through some of them to attract funds, often through grant applications, partnership engagement, or investor pitches to finance initiative in not-for-profit organizations, startup or like organizations. And, fundraising can take different types. Now, we don't have to remember this definition end to end, remember every entire thing in it. But I wanted to be able to speak to two things that literally spoke to, and the last speaker spoke to it. First of all, is that fundraising is a process. I like to say fundraising is a marathon race and not a sprint. Most people believe that, once you have your business and you start fundraising, that you immediately get the results you need. Ms. Marita was giving us a fundraising circle. I know she went about 14 different steps, before about 13 before you're able to solicit for the support you need. It's not something that happens overnight. Fundraising takes time, it takes process, there is a process to it. It's a long haul, not a short haul. You don't get it and start tonight and get results tomorrow. Fundraising requires some level of time. And I was also saying it takes time to fundraise a large amount. Well, even small amount takes some level of time. But when you hear people talk about, oh, they want to fundraise, they want to crowdfund, they want to do anything regarding raising money for a project, they're looking to get, the $1 million of this world. They're looking to get the 100,000s of this world. But the truth is, for an organization, for a startup or a social enterprise or an NGO or a philanthropic organization starting from the beginning, it takes some level of time before you're able to get there. You need to grow and you need to scale. In fundraising and that's one thing I want us to learn today, is fundraising, it's a process. It's not something that you magically just start doing one day or something that falls into your laps. It takes a process. There's a process to go about it. And the next thing I would like to say is, in terms of how it is with a process, you need to have a strategy. You need to have a plan, still referring back to the last speaker's circle of the things you need to do, right? There are strategies you need to follow. And I highlighted about 4 different strategies here that I have from experience. I see that work extensively well. You might be able to get other strategies that work, but these 4 strategies I've seen over time work very well. Networking is one. In a bid to get people to give you money or fundraise or partner with you in terms of giving you some level of resources, you need a level of fundraising for this organization, whether it's a corporation, a foundation, anyone. You can't simply work. There needs to be a level of connection, a level of meetup, a level of interaction to an extent. So networking is one strategy to go with it. But I'm sort of referring back to the last speaker because it's sort of like flows into it, is to say that in terms of fundraising, you simply cannot just Your networking has to be strategic. It has to be a strategic networking. You simply can't meet if you are, and I know we have different people in fintech, in intellectual property, in healthcare. You simply can't network with, if you're in healthcare, for instance, you simply can't network with someone in education. You sort of like rebounding on the wrong or backing on the wrong tree. You want to network strategically with people who are tailored or within your space. Storytelling is another strategy, and branding. You see, fundraising to some extent, is really how well you're able to tell your story and the story of what you do and what you are able to do. That is somewhat to one of the strategies. You need to be able to tell your story well and tell it well in a way to which it encourages and it inspires whoever you're speaking to want to partner with you or link you up with someone who wants to partner with you. That's another strategy to go about it. You need to be able to tell your story to your founder the right way. Tell them the right way, say it to them the right way. And I'm seeing someone saying in the chat about that storytelling, absolutely. Oh, yes, I'm right, that you need to be able to tell the story, and you need to be able to tell the story in a way your partner is happy about. And I'll give an example. At Faith, for instance, we support entrepreneurs, whether you're old, young. We have an age limit. We won't go beyond 18 years, for instance, because we believe that for you to take some of our training, except the ones that are online that anyone can freely take, the ones that require, in-test training, you need to have a level of freedom and decision making on your own business. And so at least 18 years is what we take. But you see, when we speak to some funders who are really looking to support people, just young people, and I say we support 18 to, let's say, give a number, let's say 70 years, for instance. When we're speaking to those funders that are really looking for young entrepreneurs, 18 to 35 years, we do not tell stories of people at 50, because we'll tell our story and branding to tailor to what it is. It's being strategic. The next, it is sharing your unique points of sale. You need to be able to share why your organization is different. You see, for every partner, any donor, anyone who you're fundraising with, any investor that you're speaking with, I can tell you that you're not the only organization that's speaking to them. There are about 2 other or 3 other organizations that are definitely speaking to them, and almost at the same time as you're speaking to them. And you need to tell them why they should partner with you. You need to tell them why they should fund you and not somebody else, because there's funding around, there's money, but the partner doesn't have a wealth of or a deep well of resources. Only a handful of people can get the funding at the right time, or the funding at a particular point in time. You need to be able to share your unique selling point. You need to be able to show other things you've done in the past, things you're capable of, team members to go with it. And the last strategy I was going to talk about is structure and implementation. I know Ms. That, and I'm still just referring back to, I think, talk about the structure. Funders now do not look beyond your name, do not look beyond. You can have a connection with somebody in an organization, but if every funder is keen on knowing, do you have the structure to take it? Do you have a board? Do you have an advisory? Do you have a trustee? Do you have people that are accountable to you, that you're accountable to when you get a level of funding to implement a project? Do you have, is there a finance team? Do you do an audit? Do you do an impact report? Have you audited any of your, because funders want to be sure that, especially in a situation or a country where some organizations are being caught in such works, they want to know, do you have the structure? Do you have things in place to ensure that you're going to deliver on the job, which speaks to implementation? And you also want to be sure that, yes, you're legit, you're not doing something wrong with the funding. And somewhat in addition to that is implementation also. You see, and we see a lot of organizations go for fundraisers these days. You can get a very amazing fundraiser, come to your organization, bring you $40 million from, I'm just giving a number, from an organization, for instance. And I tell you that if your implementation is wrong, that funder will probably not return. The last week I was speaking about how fundraising is everybody's job, from the board down to the team members who will implement the program. And that's true. Fundraising, this one of the strategies is implementation strategy. You need to be able to implement exactly what you told the partner, or more than what you told the partner. You can't deliver less below that, because you see, partners are happy to stay with organizations that are fundraised for them, or that have done implemented the program that they have correctly well for them. Let me check my time. Oh, 44. So I have about 10 minutes to go. There about 10 minutes to go. Yes, and that's really, it is what fundraising is. It's a process, it takes time. There are strategies you need to be able to explore. And for today, because of the limited time, I wanted us to look at exploring some funding options that are available to give enough time. I might have to rush through this a bit. I'm happy to take questions, if any. And I highlighted, and there are more fundraising options than this. I highlighted grants as one of it. For social enterprise, for not-for-profit organizations, grant is easily one of the primary ways by which you can get funding, for a specific project, a specific program. Sometimes it requires some rigorous reporting and evaluation, because when donors come and they're giving you a grant, they want to be sure, like I mentioned earlier on, that you're actually giving the fund to the particular resources they want to go. And I had like a part where I said innovations, innovating with the grant, you could do high impact linked grants where you tie those grants to a specific outcome, a specific milestone to ensure that you get performances. We increasingly more and more, we see funders to tell you, oh, we'll give you XYZ amount for you to implement to support maybe 1,000 people, but would only give you 20% at the start of the program. When you achieve, or when you've been able to completely fundraise or support 50%, we'll give you an additional 30% of the money. So, innovating with grants is to link it also. That helps you, your efficiency. Grants also comes also with crowdfunding platforms. I know Pay for Success financing also goes along with it. Just to rush quickly, I would move to individual donations. Individual donors are really, they can be recurring, they can be one time. It depends on your level of relationship with that funder. You require like specific fundraising strategies that speaks to what that donor is interested in. And you can also offer like being innovative. You can offer those donors more control over their philanthropic giving or engagement. You could tell the funder, oh, if you give us this, we support healthcare, for instance. And I don't know, I'm using healthcare for example. We support healthcare and provide free healthcare services to people in a particular community. If you give us so amount, your donation would go strictly to just children, not less than 10 years, not less than 5 years, if it speaks to what the partner comes along with. And that's one way you can also get donations. But to say that individual donors, you have to continue in the path of what suits the donor. And so you have to constantly be sure that you engage your individual donors. You have to engage all donors you get, but individual donors, you want to say, at certain time, ensure that you're keeping track of them, let them be involved. Individual donors are willing to or more likely to come back if they are more involved with it. Running along quickly is corporate sponsorship, pardon me. And this is like for businesses, organizations who are looking to do the CSR, they're a key way for you to be able to get, some level of funding to it. And I can say that many organizations are looking for CSRs. Many institutions have this amount of money they want to contribute, but they really want to they don't have the capacity to be able to do it. They want to partner with, partnership runs the world. You want to be able to go to these corporate sponsors and be able to, but you need to understand that for corporate sponsorship, you have to be able to align with them. For every corporate sponsor, yes, they have money, they want to do CSR, but that at the end, they want publicity, they want something. So you want to be able to give them that branding, that visibility, recognize them as much as you can. The next I have is earned income. And for social enterprise, it's quite easy. To an extent, you have some organization, some part of your organizations, everybody knows you're focused on making some money, some profit. For NGOs, it might be a bit tricky, but you need to start gravitating towards fundraising. One of the things or fundraising options you can get is that you yourself begin to provide resources or products or services that you can get paid for. One of my bosses would say that NGOs, not for profit, are not for loss. You're not meant to make a loss. Yes, you don't share the profit, unlike for profit organizations, but you want to be sustainable. And earning income is one key ways you want to be able to, constantly have that. You want to tailor your organization to be able to create resources, to be able to create products that can be sold, and that money can come back into it. Do you have a program? You could do program fees, merchandise fees, have products being created, data-driven revenue models and the rest of all. And I'm rushing this because of time. The next is contract. As similar to individual or corporate sponsors rather, where corporates they have the resources, but they don't have the manpower intent to it. So does organizations and agencies in Nigeria and across the world also have this funding that they have, but they are not able to, either because they don't have a team on ground, they don't have the experience on ground to it. And that's another interesting way. Can it be longer? Can it be longer process in getting? Yes, but they provide a level of stable income for you as an organization, especially for social enterprises. When you get this kind of funding, they're usually multi-year fundings. They're usually multi-year partnership that you can be sure that, yes, so for the next 3 years, we have this institution, this organization helping us and supporting us with that. And to check my time, I have 4 minutes left. And I will just pause here in terms of exploring funding opportunities, and maybe to just mention that something that's on the slide that I would like to mention is that in terms of fundraising for your organizations, I have seen about 3 ways to which you can explore to be able to get funding easily. You're stuck, you don't know how you're going to get funding. You're not sure which way to go about it. I would say these are 3 ways I've seen that really work well for you. One is desktop research. You do like a research of organizations that are willing to support or that support organizations like yourself doing the kind of things you work. That requires a lot of, desktop research. And I've seen these days, with the invention of AI, you can easily ask JIIPCC, Gemini, Cloud, a question, which organization will support my kind of organization? And you get that easily available to you. The next is that I really like is competitors funders. And you would see that if you're a startup that you're just growing and you have organizations that do similar or a bit similar, that are considered competitors in what you do, you can easily go to your competitors' website and see who has sponsored them in the past. More or less time, not all those past sponsors are able to still sponsor you. Their strategies might have changed, their focus might have changed, but nonetheless, that's a database in itself for you to be able to pull list of funders for. And the last one is your network in itself. You want to be able to, just walk up to people, not ask them for money. Going back to the fundraising cycle, just show them this is what we're doing. Invite them for your program. Oh, we're doing this particular thing. Invite them, let them be there, let them see. And those networks, those pool of people you invite, you show, we'll think about you first. If there's a funding opportunity that can go into your program, we'll recommend you to organizations that are willing to support organizations like yourself. And with that, I would like to pause so that I can give back at least 2 minutes more of the time back for the next speaker. And I'm happy to take any question that comes up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Awolabi, for that very wonderful session from you. I'm sure our mentees were able to pick a thing or two from everything that you said. And I hope that, they were really, really paying attention to what both speakers have had to say so far. So moving on, we have one more speaker for today, right? Mary, thank you. We'll be taking questions later on. So please kindly exercise patience. You can drop your questions in the chat box already so that we can just arrange that. And when it's time for questions, we would just do well to read through your questions and also give the opportunities for the mentors, the speakers on call to help answer questions. So moving on, we'll be taking Mr. Mark's presentation. And while Mr. Marks is presenting, I would like to kindly ask the presenters in today's class to please, that's the group presenters, to please and please get ready for your presentation immediately once you are called on, right? So please just stick to the time and also make sure that you are available, right, for your group presentation. So thank you very much. Mr. Max, over to you, sir. You're welcome. We're happy to have you in class.
Confirm you can hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you now, sir.
Oh, okay, thanks so much. Yeah, thank you. So let me start by really commending Rafiat and Wolabi for setting the stage and for really giving us a deep dive into the actual, back end. I'm going to come at the topic from the viewpoint of a practicing lawyer who advises startups at the point of funding, both as a legal advisor and also as a transactions advisor. I mean, a lot of the work Rafiat and Wolabi have already done are taking care of most of the transactional part. So I'll just try to point out some of the legal issues that come up, at that transaction take me to 10 minutes past 3, I believe. So I'll try to keep to that time and just cover a couple of issues. So one of the first issues we need to note is that why there are legal issues with startup funding is, for us to understand the peculiar issues, with startup funding. So the first thing is that with startup funding, there's a lot of risk because startups don't have a lot of back data that you can bank on to know how they perform in future. So there's that risk element. I mean, a more established business, you can tell from its 3, 4, 5, 6 years trajectory, how solid that business has become and where it is headed. But with a startup, you might not always be able to. Sorry, I see a prompt. Confirm your speaking language. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I got a prompt. Let's just be sure Zoom was not confused by my language. So, like I said, so the first thing is risk. Startups don't have enough background behind them to really let you know how they will fare. So that's a risk element. There's also a lack of collateral. They don't have assets enough to collateralize any funds that they raise. So that's also another thing that heightens their risk. Then there's also the high rate of atrophy. So, I mean, data will tell you that maybe only 2 or is it 3, I believe, out of 100 startups actually survive beyond, I believe, the first 3 years. So it means a lot of them die off. So that's also the reason why it's quite risky. So the whole idea is that it is really risky to invest in startups. That's why funding startups is not just like funding every other kind of business. Then, of course, these factors I've mentioned now mean, therefore, that startups generally lack access to formal capital. So it's difficult for startups to walk to the bank and get a loan, to get their business off the ground. And that is where startups have now developed their own unique funding mechanism. So what we call private equity and venture capital. I'll talk a little bit more about them. Then the next thing to just also highlight is that the government is always interested in startups because in every economy, the understanding is that startups typically are the greatest. I mean, I'm calling them startups now, but let me more specifically, SMEs typically are small businesses, but in every economy in the world, they usually are the bulk employers of labor and the bulk generators of the GDP, of the country. So big companies may do few big things, but when it comes to in terms of the numbers of small businesses, SMEs, startups, and what they can do, it far outweighs what 1 or 2 big businesses can do. So every healthy economy wants to have a thriving startup and SME sector. So in Nigeria, for instance, we have the SMEDAN, small medium enterprise development agency. I was recently at the launch of the JIIPCC branding for SMEs campaign, and I met the DJ of SMEDAN there. I moderated the panel he spoke on, and I didn't know SMEDAN was still doing such great work, but he mentioned the number of initiatives SMEDAN still. So it tells you that government is still trying to really invest in startups. Then there's also the Startup Act, which was passed in 2022. The focus of the Startup Act really is to solidify the startup scene in Nigeria. So a lot of things it brings. One, it sets up the National Council for Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which is supposed to be a government agency to help startups get on their feet and run. It provides a procedure for what we call startup labeling. So if you want to be a startup to be eligible to benefit from the incentives under the Startup Act, you have to go through what they call the labeling, just essentially meeting some requirements. You get labeled, and if you do, then you have access to a number of things. The Startup Investment Fund, you have access to training and capacity development. You have access to tax and fiscal incentives, including a tax holiday, regulatory collaboration. So different government regulators are mandated by the Startup Act to assist startups. You have provisions governing accelerators, startup hubs, and all such businesses that help the startup ecosystem. So it's just to let you know that the government is still interested in this area, and that in doing your work as a lawyer or as a transaction advisor to startups, these are some of the things you must have at the back of your mind. So let me move on to talk a little about capital and equity, because that's another major work that a legal or transaction advisor would do for a startup. So the first thing to note is that when it comes to capital, you need to understand that capital essentially, by definition of law, and by the Company and Other Matters Act just refers to the notional amount that a company needs to fund its business and to get its business going. So what you must also know that is important is that under the old law, the CAMA 1990, you actually had a dichotomy between what we call the authorized share capital, which is just a notional amount you pull out of the air and say, our company is going to have an authorized share capital of 10 million. But you now have what you call the issued share capital. So you can say, while our company has a share capital of 10 million, we are only going to issue 5 million of those shares and we're going to leave 5 million. So we can use it to maybe raise funds later. But unfortunately, under CAMA 2020, that dichotomy has been abolished. So you can no longer have unissued shares, or what you used to call green shares, in a company. It means that once you incorporate a company, if your share capital is 10 million, the entire 10 million must be issued immediately to people. So that could be a challenge for raising funds, because in those days, what we'll do was reserve funds, and then when you get investors, simply sell them some of that green shares, but you can no longer do that. You have to allocate all your shares. So that's one important thing to note and have at the back of your mind. Then a few words that sometimes you hear about in the startup space that could confuse you. I'll just try to throw some light on them. So you hear, for instance, shares. I've talked about shares. So what is shares? Shares essentially is just a unit of ownership in a company. And by law, each company must break down its unit of ownership. So if the company says our share capital is 10 million naira, then you must break it down into units. So you say 10, so that 10 million will be 10 million ordinary shares of 1 naira each. So it means if I own if I pay 1 million naira to that company and I buy their shares at par, it means I'll be getting 1 million ordinary shares of 1 naira each. But the company could also denote the shares in 50 kobo, for instance. So now be 20 million ordinary shares of 50 kobo each. So it means if I buy 1 million out of shares, I'll be getting 2 million, or multiply the unit of the shares by the amount of the shares, then it gives you the value of shares you actually own in the company. So that's what a share is, just a unit of measurement of your ownership in the capital of the company. We also hear the word equity. So not to confuse you, the word equity is usually used colloquially to simply mean your ownership stake in a company. So it usually refers to a percentage. So if the company has a share capital of 10 million and I've bought 1 million ordinary shares, it means I own 10% of the company. So I can simply say I have 10% equity in the company. That's just a quick way to give an idea of relationship. So if I have 10% equity and a Imobong brand has 20% equity, it means automatically she has more shares than I do. So using equity just helps us to quickly compare them. There are deeper meanings, but I'm not going into that. So for instance, at a deeper depth, equity might also mean the total ownership interest less liabilities. That's also a way to classify, but I'm just using the colloquial way you typically hear equity used in funding rounds. Then another word you would also hear is stock. So stock is not different from shares, really. Just that under the old law and under certain procedures, you can convert your shares to stock. So when shares are converted to stock, they become more easily transferable than they would be as shares. That's what it just simply means by stock. Or if you see, for instance, the word stock in the word employee stock option, which I'll talk about shortly. Then you also have stake. Stake is just equity also. What is your stake in the company? I have 5% stake in the company. Same way, colloquially, we talk about equity. Ownership interest also is largely the same thing, but ownership interest could have some other connotations that you need to be careful about. It could mean also what is the level of your exposure, the liabilities of the company as well. But all these words are used when you're talking of startup funding and you're trying to negotiate a term sheet. Investors are coming on board. You're trying to negotiate what the level of ownership of the company you are going to give them. So I just thought to throw light on those words. Then we'll move on to another important word you always hear about when it comes to startup funding and negotiating ownership and equity stake, is the word dilution. So dilution, as I mentioned equity already, simply means anything that happens to the share capital of the company that makes my stake or equity in the company to be lowered. That means I have been diluted. So assuming the company when we started was 10 million share capital, and I paid 1 million and I got 1 million ordinary shares of 1 naira each, meaning that I own 10% equity of the company. And then suddenly the company now needs to grow, and the company decides to increase its share capital to 50 million and now allocates, or let me use 20 million so that calculation is there for me. It decides to increase the share capital to 20 million and now sells the additional 10 million to new people. It means that once those new people come on board, whereas when the capital was 10 million, I own 10% of the company. Now I own 5% because 1 million now will be, I now own, what now? Is it, sorry, I hope I got I own 10%, but I now own 5% exactly, yes. Plus, yeah, would 1 million be 5% of 20 million? I'm sorry, my maths, I'm a lawyer, so if my maths is bad, forgive me. But I hope you get the idea, essentially, that my ownership stake or equity has reduced because the share capital has increased. So we'll talk more about anti-dilution. But some other things you need to note also important. Startup funding will be words, like preemption right. So preemption right is a right to say every time the share capital of the company is increased, one of the anti-dilution mechanisms to say, look, every existing shareholder should be given the opportunity to buy up the pro rata, that's an equal amount of shares that they already own. So it means if the company is increased by another 10 million naira and I already own 10%, then automatically I have the right to buy 10% of that new share capital created. It is only if I choose not to buy, I have no money to buy, then they can sell to another person. That's what we mean by preemption right. So you must preempt me, you must give me the opportunity of buying, and it is when I refuse to buy before you can sell to outside. So that's also a way to protect yourself against dilution. Then, there are a few other things, I'll just keep them because my time is running. Because you question answer, I'll get to them. Then another very important issue we should talk about is the issue of vesting of shares and employee share-based compensation. So if you have followed the startup world, you know this is a very important topic in startup world, that when people come together to form a business or they employ people in a startup, some of the people you employ may be very key to the business of the startup. You do not want them to leave. So in addition to paying them a salary, or because you are not able to pay them a full salary because you are a startup, you can offer them ownership of the company and say, look, if you stay loyal to the company, then you can also become a part owner of the company, and then you have conditions. So that's what we call vesting. So vesting simply means that you potentially give a number of shares or equity to a person, but because you want that person's commitment and loyalty over time, you say, look, even though potentially I'm giving you 5% equity in this company, for you to become entitled to own and enjoy that 5%, you must stay with the company for 4 years, or you must do XYZ for the company. For instance, if it's your software developer, I can say, look, part of the condition is that if you are able to design our mobile app and launch it, and we're able to get to 10,000 downloads, then automatically I'll give you 5% of the company. So it means at the point the agreement is made, potentially the 5% belongs to the person, but before he's going to enjoy that 5%, he has to meet certain conditions. It could be time, it could be particular milestone factors that you give to him. That's essentially what a vesting agreement is. But note what I told you earlier about the fact that under Nigerian law, you cannot have green shares. All shares must be allotted. So it means, therefore, that when it comes to vesting of shares, there are some challenges. Number one, you cannot leave green shares and wait to vest it on the person. So one of the ways we get around that, personally, what I do is that we put those vested shares, one of the co-founders, we hold it in trust for that person. Vesting agreement signed. And once the person meets that vesting agreement,
hello, Mr. Max.
yes.
Yeah, sorry,
I'm almost
your
out of
network
time.
your network just went bad for a bit.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Where did you hear me last? What I was talking about the
vesting agreements. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm saying essentially, so the vesting agreement has challenges because, as I mentioned earlier, under Nigerian law, you cannot leave unissued shares in the share capital of the company. So it will mean, therefore, that if you follow it, normally you are supposed to issue those shares to the person. And you don't want to do that because if you have done that and the person refuses to perform and maybe he leaves the company, it means he's already become the owner of the shares. So one way to get around that is to put, assuming that 5% equity, in the name of one of the co-founders to be held in trust for the vestee. And then you sign an agreement that puts the condition under which that vested becomes the owner of those shares, so that once he meets those conditions, then that co-founder transfers the shares to him. Another way to do it also is use what, which is actually legal, is to use what we call a clawback mechanism. A clawback mechanism means that we'll give the shares to you, but on the condition that if you do not fulfill XYZ condition, we'll take the shares back from you. So that's clawback, means that we'll take the shares back from you, and that's supported also by the provisions of the CAMA. But essentially, a vesting agreement is simple. It could sometimes be embedded in co-founders agreement. So amongst yourselves, the co-founders, you can tell yourselves that, look, for you to own the shares that company over time. Sometimes when founders come into your company, they're going to insist on this. When they see some of your key members, maybe your chief technology, their investment will be safeguarded because of those people's track record, their knowledge, their skills. So they may insist that put this person on investing schedule to ensure that he stays with the company at least for the next 3 years after our money comes in. So this, these are the context in which you might need to have a vesting agreement. Then let me talk briefly. I know I'm doing badly for time, but just give me a few more minutes that I'll touch what I believe are very important. It's similar to what I mentioned now, which is the vesting agreement, but it's slightly different. So with an employee share-based compensation scheme, what you're trying to do is that beyond the benefit of salaries that the employees get, typically most startups cannot pay full-scale salary, because if you are looking for, if you're a tech startup, for instance, you need a chief technology officer who is somebody who has maybe 10 plus years experience, developing software and all of code software and all of that, or mobile apps, or specialist area of technology. You might not be able to pay that person's salary. So the only way you may be able to get him on board your team is to give him either the vesting we just mentioned, or to use what we call an employee share-based compensation scheme. So it takes many forms, but the substance of what it simply means is this: is that at the startup of the company, you create what we call an employee options pool. An employee options pool means that you say X percentage of the equity of the company is going to be reserved for employees. So you could say 10%, which is typical. Sometimes when investors come in, they insist you increase it before they invest to like 15%. The reason why they do that is to ensure that when their money is coming into the company, the employee pool will not dilute their own shares. The employee pool will dilute your own shares as the founders before their investment comes into the company. So what the pool essentially does is just to create a scheme where employees, in addition to normal salaries, can also have the option to buy company shares at a discounted price. So the benefit to them is this: is that if they stick with your company, and currently the value of the shares of the company is ₦1, but if your company is able to stay for the next 5 years and they stay with you and they grow the company, where the value of the company becomes maybe 10 naira per share, you can give them the option of saying, even though the company's share has become 10 naira per share, but because of your loyalty over the years, you have the option of buying the same share at ₦1. So it means that person is able to buy the share at ₦1 and instantly sell some of the shares and make a profit of 9 naira per share. So that's part of the advantage of what an employee share scheme could bring. Then let me finally just close and mention 2 things. So foundational agreements that every startup must have. So for any startup going for funding, these are the agreements you must have in place, or no founder is going to touch you. If you have co-founders, they want to see a co-founders agreement, because disagreement between co-founders can ground the company and ruin their investment. So they want to be sure that between you, the co-founders, you have understanding, not only interpersonal relationship, but that also legally you have put your relationship into writing, and that nobody's going to hold the company to ransom at any point in time. You also would need a shareholders agreement. So a shareholders agreement is an agreement between shareholders. It could be between you and the new investors that set out the rights and obligations of different shareholders. So you could set out things like how to vote, who appoints who to the board, and other corporate governance issues in the company. Then, of course, you need a term sheet. So a term sheet is usually a preliminary agreement drawn up between an investor, a venture capitalist, private equity firm investing into a startup that sets out, the primary obligations. It's not much different from a shareholders agreement. Shareholders agreement is much more advanced. The term sheet usually is shorter, usually more a summary of what the parties have agreed in terms of how the investment will come in and all. Another very important agreement that I'll discuss a little bit later is what we call a SAFE. A SAFE is means simple agreement for future equity. It's a hybrid type of financing where companies use what we call sort of a convertible note. A convertible means that the company takes what looks like a loan from the investor, but now agrees that automatically upon the happening of certain events, that loan will be converted into equity in the company. The reason why this is good is that for the startup, it means that you don't have to dilute your shares. You are taking what looks like a loan, but yet you are not paying any interest on it. And you only convert it to equity when the business, hits certain milestones. So it's a very good way. It's sponsored by an accelerator called YC Combinator. That's what they've used and popularized over the years. So it's a very good way to get funding for a startup. Then lastly, and this is the lastly, legal due diligence is the key last step before you can get funding as a startup. So legal due diligence is simply the investor just checking to be sure that they understand all the risk factors in your business and that they are able to now factor that into their agreement, term sheet, shareholders agreement with you. So they want to know about your business. They want to be sure that your business is in good standing with the law. It is registered. Your intellectual property is protected. You have done a proper audit to make sure that not only are you protected, you are also not infringing on third parties' IP. They want to check your tax records to be sure it's good. Your HR policy, Rafi had mentioned earlier. Don't check HR, don't check your internal governance issues. They want to check everything about your company. So a lot of the work you will do as a legal advisor in the startup space is to be engaged to conduct a legal due diligence on behalf of investors who are trying to invest into a startup. But one of the smart things you can do, and which is one of a large part of the work I do, is to meet startups and say, look, before you get an investor coming, let me help you put together all the documents and everything you will need for a successful legal due diligence. So when the legal due diligence comes, an investor comes, they don't have to waste time. They find that you're already ready for due diligence. You can, of course, most startups will not be able to pay you, so you can agree to even take equity at that point for your payment. So whenever the investor comes, you get paid also as the startup gets paid, which is kind of a win-win for you and for the startup. Most startups are ready to accept that. So thank you, and I'm sorry that I overshot my time. So I'll end at this point. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much,
Mr.
Mr.
Max.
It was nice hearing from your point of view and also the things you had to highlight. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your points and your thoughts on how to raise funds for startups. So our three mentors have done quite a lot. With the limited time that they've been able to just show us and carry us through how to raise funds for startups, things that you need to know, from due diligence to your structure as a startup, what you need to put in place before you can now begin to look for people to fund the what you are trying to do, right? So while we have heard from our mentors, we've also given the opportunity for our mentees, right, to make research and also come up with a presentation slide. So I hope we have the presenters in class, Group 1 for Entertainment, Business and Law. If you're with us, please, you can kindly start your presentation. You have 7 minutes for your presentation. I would like to ask that you stick to time so that we can move on to the next group and then we can move on with the rest of the session. We still have a few things to go in this particular session. So please, we would like to run through that as fast as we can. So do we have the group presenter for Group 1? Do we have the presenter for Group 1 in class?
Yes, she's here. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, good afternoon. Happiness. You can go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah. Okay, my name is Happiness Boniface and I'm presenting for Group 1. And our topic for today is fundraising for startups. So for today's presentation, we'll be discussing venture capital funding. We'll also be discussing angel investors. We'll also be talking about the bootstrapping accelerators and incubators, or as the method of raising funds for startups. So firstly, I'll start with venture capital funding. Now, venture capital funding is a private ownership financing that supports businesses or companies with
growth potentials, and mostly in exchange for equity. Most of the times, what venture capitalists do, they come to business owners or founders, and they ask the founder or the business owner for, they want to invest. Now, what they may want, most of the times, they may want equity. Equity here, it talks about ownership. So there are different types of venture capital funding. Number one is the seed capital. And this is the earliest stage where capital is provided for everything about the business, from the product development to the consumer, to the marketing. Everything about funding for the business is usually provided for under this stage. Now, the second one is startup financing. Now, for startup financing, finances are not usually given for everything. The person that wants to finance this business or a company would want to start somewhere, but not for everything. It supports more developed startups. They may choose to start from, maybe the person had already started the business. They may choose to start up from somewhere. Now, another type is the first stage financing. Of course, just like the startup financing, it's for the already existing company and for critical expanding of customer bases. Now, another one is second stage financing. Now, under second stage financing, business expansions that will enable companies to enter new markets is usually what is usually financed. We have the bridge financing, we have the mezzanine, and the acquisition financing. Now, under the acquisition financing, the person would usually want to finance to get equity for everything. Now, how do you attract venture capital fundings? Now, I'll just highlight them. One of them is strong market validation. You need, how is your marketing validation? Can we trust? Can the persons that want to invest in your business, can they trust you? The second one is a well-prepared business plan. Of course, this cannot be overemphasized. Anyone that would want to put in their money into your business would want to see what you have to offer.
Happiness, are you still with us? Hello, Happiness, are you with us? Please, am I the only one that can't hear Happiness? Sorry, please, can someone confirm that?
I can't hear Happiness as well. I think we lost her.
Oh, all right. I think she's having network issues. I hope she's able to join in. Or do we have a backup presenter on standby for her?
Sorry, good afternoon, everyone. I would volunteer to be a backup presenter while she comes back.
All right, thank you very much, Oluwabomi. Please, you can carry on.
Thank you very much. So she was trying to talk about the advantage of venture capital. Sorry, so she was trying to talk about the how to attract an investor. You have to have a valid business plan, and the benefit of venture capital is you have sponsorship and mentorship. Of course, you have business slide. You have sponsorship and mentorship from the capital. You have enough substantial funds to support your startup business for rapid growth. The only disadvantage, of course, is because of the equity involved. You may not be able to have substantial control over your company because of the high ROI involved. You may have pressure. There may be a lot of pressures to give profit to make the business grow faster. So you might be prioritizing short-term gains over long-term sustainability. Business slide. Next slide. Can anyone hear me? Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So the next one, we'll be talking about angel investors. Angel investor is someone, like an affluent individual who invests his or her personal money as seed funding for your startup or business in exchange for a minority share. The difference between this one and venture capital is that venture capital is usually of a business to business kind of thing, or a business of firm kind of thing, where they're expecting returns, they're expecting to have equity over your share, no substantial amount of it. But in this angel investor is the individual personal money for in exchange for just a little amount of equity in your business. So they're usually just successful individuals or retired individuals that just want to support the growth of your startups. Not there's no major big what's it called, exchange. Business slide. So the benefits of angel investors, they provide access, capital access, which you may not be able to get, like commercial access, like bank loans and all. They often have valuable industry experience. They provide strategic advice and support. They have flexible investment decisions and control over your business. Decision or control, this decision or control over the partnership. Next slide, please. So can I have the next slide? Thank you very much. So how do we find an angel investors? Of course, you find them by networking. You go to events and conferences, you meet them. You can access them through your social media, followings. You reach out to them, emails. You can also ask for referrals from your startup entrepreneurs like you, or like one of our mentors said, there are some companies that you just have to go and research who they are, and research someone that has supported them before. So, or you can reach out to them for referrals to for people that likely support the kind of business that you are in. Next slide, please. Thank you. So how do you pitch to an angel investor? You have to have a compelling business plan. You have to be able to sell your story to them. So you have to tell them what's it called, what your product is all about. You also have to know your audience. You have to know what their value, the investor, what is the value, what is their value, what do they normally support? Is their value and vision in line with yours? So you have to understand all those all those intricacies. You also have to be able to explain the market opportunities. For everybody, it's just business. So you have to be able to tell them how your product is needed, why it is needed, and what it is needed for. So you have to be able to also explain your unique value proposition. Sorry, that was supposed to be proposition, not presentation. Unique value proposition. What makes you different? Why should they invest in that business? Business slide. Sorry, can I have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So like I said earlier, you need to be able to have a sustainable and a lasting business plan. What is the goal? How you intend to grow? Your team building, your financials. You have to have all those things to be able to convince an investor, somebody to put in their money into your business. You also have to be able to explain your exit strategy. So if your plan fails, what are the things that your investors can expect if what you have in plan does not eventually work for you? So that's okay. Even if my first plan does not work, I have a backup plan. So what is your exit strategy? All those things you have to be able to explain it to a potential investor to convince them to invest in your business. Next slide, please. Thank you. So moving on, we are talking about crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, as we all know, is a method of raising capital from a pool of different kind of people. It could be online, it could be physical, to support a specific project, a common goal, a startup. So crowdfunding is also a practice of funding a project or venture by raising small amounts of money from a large number of people. So crowdfunding is vital for gathering financial resources. It's vital for validating the market demand, engaging with customer, and building community support. Basically, we are not strange to the idea of crowdfunding. So this method is used to raise funds to foster the your vision. All you need to do is to make other people believe in that vision, and then a group of people that believe in that vision, they may help contribute to that purpose. Next slide, please. So the popular we have a lot of crowdfunding platforms in our society today. So most popular ones is we have the Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe, Fundly, Nigeria Fund, and so on and so forth. Please, next slide. Thank you. So what are the pros and cons of crowdfunding? If you have a crowdfunding, of course, like I said earlier, yeah, your market, it provides market validation for you. You have publicity for it, direct customer feedback. You are building a loyal community around your service. And the only disadvantages is that it could be very competitive. A lot of people are looking for the same thing that you're looking for. So it could be very competitive. It is all or nothing. It's either people believe in it or they don't. Then there's high risk that you might not get it. You might not get the funding, or you might not get the funding that you think you get. And then there's also the threat to intellectual property. It is not protected in any way. There's no exchange of value, rather than just believing in it. So there's no way to guarantee whether you're going to get it or not. Next slide, please. Thank you. The next one, we're moving on to bootstrapping. So bootstrapping in the context of entertainment business is building a startup using your personal revenue or personal savings from your early projects or from your previous project or personal savings or money of your own or even loans to build that project. For entertainment startups, it could be, as you know, whether record labels, production company, management company, or film production, just anything that involves the entertainment business management. Bootstrapping is when you use your money to fund that business. Please, next slide. So when is bootstrapping appropriate? It is when you want to, maintain some level of control and ownership over that business, because, you're the major financier. You're able to make decision right there and then. So you have a niche, you niche down, you make decision, you know what you want. It's a bit entertainment industry is, it's wide and diverse. So it's not just, you're not cherry picking from everything and anything. So you're able to fund your business yourself, make decision. You are able to also generate revenue quickly and fast because you are the major controller of the business. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. Moving on to the last topic, accelerators and incubators. So accelerators are short incentive programs designed to help early and mid-stage startup grow quickly. They can help startup validate their business model, build customer base, and raise capital. They are often cohort-based and offer specific tasks to help startups. So what accelerators are basically what they basically do is help startup business manage, help them build a customer base, manage a business, raise funds, connect them to investors, mentor them, educate them. While incubator programs are suited for the early stage, the seed stage, when they need validation for their business. They are just they need to be able to pitch that idea in a way to make sense. So incubators provide the resources and environment to help startups exploit and develop those ideas. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of to give an pictorial view of what an incubator and an accelerator is like. So the incubator is a structured collaborative program they're designed to help startups succeed. Their primary identifiers is guidance to form a product or service. So basically they help visualize the idea better, or validate the product better to the consumer or investors, or put a life into the idea. Why accelerators basically put a structure around the business, and focus on the growth of the business. The focus on mentorship. Next slide, please. Hello, can anybody hear me? Next slide, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
Please, next slide, please. Thank you. So similarities between and differences between accelerators and incubators. So the similarities involved, they both support the resources. No, this both provide support and resources to startups, and they both can be sources of funding to startups. They contribute to the vibrancy of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and due to their support, due to their support, there is rapid growth to the business and creation of economic growth. The differences are, like I said earlier, one happens when at the idea stage, the seed stage, where the other happens where the business has started, the production has started. Incubators basically last for 1 to 5 years, while accelerators is usually shorter. They're like 2 to 6 months. While incubators work well with startup stage, accelerators work with startups when they're already in the market, when there's a demand for them. Please, next slide. Thank you. Thank you. Accelerators and incubators in Nigeria. Examples of them, we have the Hadaverse, we have the AR Labs Lagos Tech Starters, we have the Co-Creation Hub, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for listening. That will be our short presentation for Group 1. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Oluwabumi, for helping complete the presentation on behalf of your group. Well done to you and to your team members for putting together that presentation and for you having presentation in class. So I've not been able to reach out to the Group 2 presenter, and it seems they are unavailable for class. So moving on, not to waste any time, right, we'll be taking feedback from the mentors, like anything that they would like to further say before we take questions. if there are any points they would like to highlight in regards to the presentation, and also some things that they would like to point out in general as it regards to raising funds that they may have not been able to highlight during the course of their presentation. So for like 5 minutes, we'll just be going back to the mentors for them to just give us those highlights, and then we'll take questions. Let's starting back from the top. We would be starting with Miss Rafiat, sorry. Ms. Rafiat, if you're still with us, we just want to hear from you in like 5 minutes, anything you would like to highlight, any points that you thought probably you must have missed out during the session that you would like to highlight, and also maybe based off the presentation, if there's anything you noticed that you would like to give feedback to, please, ma, the floor is yours for that.
All right, thank you. Well done to everybody who has presented so far, and especially the mentees presentation. You guys really did a lot of work, and it shows that a lot of work went into that. Thank you. Anything I might have wanted to add to my presentation, I think has been covered by Omade. I think that was the next person after me. Yes, so everything I might have wanted to add has been covered by him and the other presenters as well. So I don't have anything else to add. I don't. But I think I have a question. There was a question after my presentation that I would like to answer.
All right,
Can you?
go ahead.
I can't remember the question. Can you please bring it up?
Yes, sorry. That was for me. I was asking, how do you handle interpersonal relational issues when handling your human resource department for your startup, or like for attempting to fundraise for that startup?
Human resources interaction when you're fundraising. Yeah?
Yeah, like interrelational issues, yes.
Okay. What I will say about human resources for nonprofit organizations basically is, as I said, first and foremost, you are a volunteer. Like, you are part of the vision, you are part of the vehicles to achieve the organization's mission. So that's like the first thing you should remember. Or when it comes to interaction, that's a thing that has more to do with what the strategic atmosphere, what the strategy in that organization is, what the structure is like. I think that is where the major focus should be on. So if, for example, you have a very inclusive board, if you have a very executive board, and you carry them along, you work with them, it will have a kind of top-down like hierarchy, yeah? And maybe, talking like your peers will be a problem because they may not understand where you're coming from, and you're trying to, try to make them understand and try to make them support you and all that. That might be where you will get, you will have a slight problem. But I think basically it all boils down to communication. For me, what has worked for me is communication. Make sure everybody knows what is happening at every point in time. Send out steady reminders of what your mission is, what the vehicles are that you're trying to use to achieve that mission. Try to make sure that everybody is on the same page at every point in time. Carry everybody along. As I said, your need statements and your other aspects of your fundraising cycle has to be a continuous process. You don't just have one event where you come and say, okay, this is what we're doing for this year, this is our annual fund for this year, this is what we're trying to do for this year, and then that's it. When I get to have another meeting or have another discussion until next year, no. The communication has to be ongoing. So as much as people know that you're carrying them along, as much as people know that you're on the same page with them, interaction shouldn't be an issue. Okay. Whether it's top down, whether it's among your peers, it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you very much, Ma, for helping us answer that question, and thank you for your feedback. I think we'll just adopt that structure so that we can have feedbacks and then take questions at the same time simultaneously. So moving on to Mr. Owolabi, right? So please, we'll just like to hear from you, feedback, any added points, and then I think there are some questions directed to you. We'll do well to read that after your feedback is done, after you're done with your feedback. Mr. Owolabi? Are you with us? Hello, Mr. Olabi. Are you still with us? I can see you're unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. I was saying rather that the presentation was really thought out, well researched. It's obvious that the team took quite a lot of time being able to review it. I like the accelerator and the incubator aspect of it. Somewhat, just to add that I think more and more accelerator programs are really the way I think about it is you go to an incubation program when you're really at a really early stage. For accelerator programs, you're not really a startup anymore. Most accelerator programs are not meant for startups. They're more for more organizations that have been existing and that have grown. And that was mentioned, but you're already growing. You're just looking for more scalability. You're trying to put succession planning, corporate, and that's where you begin to talk about accelerator programs. Is where you begin to talk about boards, corporate boards, and talking about having a charter for your organization. How you get your trustees, who takes on after the executive director is there and there. But yeah, I really like the way the dimension of the way the different funding option was being done by the team. If I have any additional presentation, would be to say that you see. In building networking is one of the difficult things. You have to attend events, you have to attend programs where you'll be able to meet with people, potential funders. But also what I've seen is that, you see, at every interaction, at every opportunity you get, you meet people. LinkedIn is a very useful tool for you to grow your network. You could easily just, follow anybody you just think would, whether they're a potential funder or not, just like anyone you think you should know, you should just quickly follow. For instance, an example, I've seen Ms. Radiat present. I've seen Mr. Max also present, and see the thing I've done is during their both presentation, I've gone to follow them on LinkedIn, because that's how you grow the network. That's how you grow your connection. That's how you're able to then reach out to somebody to want to say, oh, I found out that you know this donor. Please, do you mind doing a linkage for us to go alongside with it? And also, trust is important in the fundraising space. You need to build trust as you go on, as people connect you, as you connect with people. Be open, be open and direct. If a funder, you promise a funder something happens, you cannot deliver, quickly tell the funder, because trust is what makes it. Once you lose trust in the fundraising space, it's really difficult to be able to gather that back. And that was that's the addition and comment I have. I will take the questions if you read them, because I think there were a couple of questions, I guess.
All right, thank you, Mr. Olabi. Going to the questions, I think we have a question for Imal Bong Brown. The question here is, how do you suggest we structure our storytelling peculiar to the interests of the donor at hand, leading to the best presentation of marketability towards that prospective donor?
Okay. So, good and important question. I think the important thing you need to get, first of all, is you need to understand what your donor or your funder is looking for. Like I was giving an example the other time, a funder looking to support youth, like you need to understand the partners or the sponsors' lingo. Like you have to communicate your storytelling alongside the way they pronounce or they announce things. Let me give a practical example. There's a partner of ours that support entrepreneurs, right? Growing entrepreneurs. The way we classify those entrepreneurs internally is the way Smidan would do, nano and micro small businesses. But this funder, for their own language, they classify them as small growing businesses, SGBs. We do nano NMSMs for our own entrepreneurs. But when we go and meet that partner and we're telling our stories, we communicate our story in the language they understand. Because if we go saying nano and micro small businesses, it's disrupting for them. So we tell our story the way the partner is able to relate, or the funder is able to relate, in the way they will be interested in hearing. So you've seen a partner, they don't support nano and micro businesses, but they're calling them small and growing businesses that their funders are between 18 to 35. we go telling the stories of the things we've done. There are tailors with 18 to 35, and we say small and growing businesses. You're not lying. You're just communicating it the way the partner understands it. So you have to structure your activities or the way you speak to a funder. You cannot lie, but you have to structure it in a way that the donor or the partner is able to relate to it. And that way, in terms of presentation skills, just make it as simple as possible. One thing I've learned that funders have, and if you recall my presentation slide, you will see JIIPCC logo somewhere on the side, because what happens is whoever sees that slide knows that this slide is meant for them. So when you're meeting the partner, you're communicating, and you have their logo on your slide. What the partner knows is you've taken time out to think about them and to include them in your, like you've created this document for them. Those little things are storytelling skills you have that can help you. And you also learn along the way. You have to learn. If you've spoken to a funder one day and the funder says no to you, for instance, you want to ask why. Why did you say no to us? So that you can include that into the learnings you get overall. That's the way I would answer the question. If you think I didn't answer it the best way, I'm happy to add addition to it.
Oh no, it was okay. It was good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Is that all the questions?
All right, thank you, sir. I think there are still a few questions, but maybe, okay, Mary, please, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Good afternoon. I'm so sorry I can't turn on my camera.
No problem.
Please go ahead.
First question. The second mentor, he emphasized ways on, in a way, selling yourself to like a sponsor. So let's like switch roles. Imagine you are a sponsor. How do you know that what like an organization or what a new startup is saying? How do you know if they will in the long run implement what they are saying? How do you know they are not like looking for like maybe they're not fraudulent or something? Then the second question, I'm not really sure if a startup is necessarily a business, because in my own opinion, startup, when I hear startup, I imagine something in the tech industry and all. But if indeed, or if they are similar, or if it's the same thing, can you, if like for example, now somebody who is trying to start up like a small business, you're trying to grow your business, the ways of getting funds for startup, is it the same thing, same like procedure for getting funds when you want to like start a business? Thank you. These are my two questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. To start with the first question, to say if you flip it around, if I'm a funder, how do you know you could trust an organization to it? And I'll give the best way to, in my opinion, to illustrate the answer to that is, if you get an email today saying somebody's offering you a job to come and take 2 million naira per month, what's the first thing you do? You do a Google search of the organization. You look at them. For a funder, for any funder, and the organization, the space I work in, where I work, I myself do like a philanthropy division where we get a lot of programs in. The proposal that comes in that look interesting, what I do is I first of all do a Google search, and that's what we're speaking to in terms of structure. When I do a Google search, I check to see if your organization has just LinkedIn profile, just LinkedIn profile, just Facebook profile, and you're looking to get, let's say, 40 million. You like, it's sort of like, it's not a bad thing for a startup to have just not be able to get a website, but I tell you, it's like waving red flag already in our presence, number one. So we want to see if you have credible, like you can be found online. One, do you have an address, a credible address to it? Three, do you have a structure in place? Structure in the place is, do you have a board? Who is on your board? Do we trust people on your board? Because the board you present to, or the advisory board, the board of trustees, the board of directors you have, shows a funder that you are serious. For us at Faith Foundation, every time we want to really just put out anything, you will see our board. We lay out the people we have on our board, because it also reassures the funders that yes, these people are serious. Also, we look at track record. What have you done in the past? What project have you been? Who did you do the project with? And for startup, it might be a bit difficult to be able to show track record. This is your first year, you've not done anything, you're looking for funding to be able to do anything. I usually would advise organizations that haven't done much looking for funding to partner with organizations that have done something. That organization is the one to say, oh, they're partnering with this organization, the organization is trustworthy. So what a funder really will look for is track record, presence, board, structure in place. Most organizations would ask you to present TAC document to show that you're registered, some level of documentation to show that you are legit, so to speak, in it, to be sure that yes, you are. And that's what I know most funders look for to be sure before they go ahead in funding you. So you won't even get a call back if you literally do not have those structure in place, except there's somebody who knows your organization into it. But a cold call, an organization that doesn't know you, you're just trying to pitch to them, you would need to show credibility, CSE documents, financial records, just things, Eskimo, for instance, to be sure that yes, you are a legit organization. And that's the way I would answer the question from the flip side of what a funder will look for to be sure that yes, you are. In terms of your second question, so the way startup sounds to me is really any type of organization that's really just starting up. In terms of it, I understand that yes, some people think of it in tech-wise, but startup could be really any organization. You really are just the very beginning of early ages of it. And in my own opinion, organizations that are within 1 to 3, depending, I don't want to put a year, but really, if you're really at the very beginning of your career, yes, you want to seek funding, grant to it. But as you grow, if you do your job diligently well as the owner, the founder, the COO of the organization, as you grow past certain level, people would believe, or even funders would expect you not to start looking for grants, free money in quotes, like free resources. People will start looking that you take in equity, you take in loans from back. At the very beginning I would always discourage startups to take up loans, to take up equity, angel investors at the very beginning. When you're really just starting up, you're testing prototypes, testing your hypothesis, testing products, building your prototype at the early stage. At the early stage, grants or partnership opportunities will help. But as you then begin to grow, raking the money, you're known, you have everything in place, you can then begin to take equity, angel investors, loan, to just show, because you can't expect an organization that is 20 years to still be looking for grants. Something is not being effective, is not being implemented well. If they're looking for funding, they're looking for grants, or they're looking for a loan. That's the way I would answer the question. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Wolabi, for helping us with that question. Okay, moving on to Mr. Marks. Mr. Marks, we just want to hear from you, final words, feedbacks, and then I think we'll share. Okay, I'll ask you some of the questions on the chat box so that you can give answers to them.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and let me commend Group 1. I thought that was a very well put together presentation. You researched it in detail. I like also that you were very methodical in your presentation. So I'm very happy that after discussing every concept, you looked at the pros and the cons. And I think it's very important because, like I mentioned, my own role in the startup space is usually not a role that is very into the soft skill side of things. And we just come in and say, look, ours is to advise, do a due diligence and all of that. So, some of the things Wolabi just said now really resonate with me, because when we see certain things about a startup, if I'm on the investor side, then because there are so many startups looking for funding. So the moment you don't have basic things, you are not ready, you don't have your website, and your CSE is not yet done and all of that, then really, no investor wants to wait around for that, because time is money. So which is why I say one of the services we offer, and which I'll advise you as as a younger professional, because it's difficult to become a lawyer to investors. It takes a while. So earlier in my career, at the point I even got angry and said I won't do anything with startups anymore, because what used to happen to me then was that I would be with startups, do a lot of work with them, do their CAC incorporation, register their trademarks and all. And the moment they get the funder comes in with his own lawyer and they kick you out. So, and of course, you won't blame the funder because, his money is at stake. He's not going to come and use the startup's lawyer. He would want to come with his own lawyer, into the transaction because that's how he feels secure. I mean, he wants to be sure that his own lawyer will tell him the truth because he suspects that if you are the lawyer to the startup, you might be anxious to close the funding round and you might not want to expose certain things that should be exposed. So that, so I'm just saying that for you at the startup part of your career, it might be easier for you to do the model of going to startups and saying, look, let me help you do everything that is necessary to put you in position for due diligence. So a lot of the things that Mr. have already mentioned, ensure your CAC is in place, your trademark, basic documentation, your agreements, your employee options pool is already set up and all of that, so that when an investor comes, they meet you at a stage where you are ready. And, I think investors typically, are more attracted to people who look like they have put some work, into getting themselves set up and ready to receive funding. So I'll just make a few comments on, on Group 1's presentation. Like I said, I commend you. I really love the structure of your presentation and the fact that you kept discussing pros and cons after each of the concepts you discussed. So I just wanted to add that you broke down the stages of funding, and which was very good. But just to add that, one of the popular things we always hear when we hear about startup funding, you always hear things like this company closed a $500,000 pre-seed funding, or this company closed a Series A funding of $1.5 million, or closed a Series B funding of $12 million. So I know you might not all become, very conversant with that. So I'll just give some perspective to that. It's sort of arbitrary. It's not, there's no industry standard or no law that specifies what a seed funding round is, what a Series A is, what a Series B is necessarily. It's more of industry standard over time. So just to highlight what the differences are. So pre-seed funding, you got that correct, is, the initial stage where, the donor family and friends and all are just putting in money to your startup. Seed round, will become where external parties begin to come in. We already mentioned the angel investors. Some really early stage venture capitalists may also come in at the seed round. It's not usual, but it's not impossible. Like I said, these things are not cast in stone. They are just to help you understand where you are on your journey. Then after the seed round, you're now going to what we call the series. So the first we call is the Series A. So the Series A, is usually funding around the region of somewhere from anything from, but typically it comes in at about, courses like rightly said on, proving your business model, just being sure that you actually have a viable business model. And at this point, of course, typically venture capitalists would come in at this point. Then also there's a Series B funding round. So Series B is more advanced. So it's usually anywhere from about $5, $7, $10 million to maybe about 20, even maybe up to 40 million US dollars. So at this stage, of course, nobody's going to put that level of money into a business that doesn't already have, a product fit and already is sure and already has a properly viable product. So at that point, now it's really to begin to scale the business. Then, of course, we go to what we call Series C. So Series C now is a business who is already running, already has scaled around, just wants to expand, maybe enter into new markets, cross the borders and all of that. Then beyond that, you can continue to have series. So like I said, they're arbitrary. So you can hear Series D, E, F, and all. These are just to give an idea of how mature that particular startup is. That's what it means. So it's not, like I said, there's no clear definitions on what any of this is. But you also touched on another important concept, which is mezzanine funding. So mezzanine funding really is funding for more matured businesses that really sometimes people want to pivot, move from one industry segment to another industry segment, or make a vertical leap, in its in the industry it's currently in. But the important thing about mezzanine funding is that mezzanine funding is usually more matured, and at that stage, it's a mix of debt and equity. So it's usually not all debt, equity. So it could be a mix of the different kinds of funding. Then another important type of funding you did not have on your screen. I mean, it's not super important to start off, but it's just good for you to know. It's what we call vulture funds. So at the end of your slide where you had the different types of funding, one of the last is what we call vulture funds. So vulture funds are funds that come in when a company is in distress. Sometimes they come simply to take over the company, strip the assets and sell and recover. Sometimes they come in to actually invest, to put money in, reorganize the company, and get it out of debt and back functioning. So vulture funds are also quite important to know. But like I said, they're usually on the other end of the spectrum, not usually at the startup end. It's just good you know about that. The other important thing also to note is that in startup funding, a very important concept you must not forget is the exit. When a funder comes into your business, what they are looking for is to actually make a return on investment. And, that's what you usually call an exit. And how they make a return on investment is to get your business to a point where either they get a higher level of funding to come in. So somebody who invested in your seed round may only want to stay with you. He invested into your seed round. At that point, you are valued at maybe 500,000 USD. He only wants to get you to the point of your Series A funding where you are now worth $50 million, and he cashes out. Because at that point now, he gets a good return on investment and he walks away. Or it could be somebody who comes in at your Series A and wants to get you to Series C and get you to get to an IPO. An IPO is an initial public offering where members of the public can now buy your shares. Of course, at that point, the value of your company and the shares will have gone up significantly. So for the investor, he's looking at an exit. No investor is coming to live within your business forever. You understand? Even if that's the aim, but the aim is to get to a definite point where they make a significant return on investment. And finally, it's something I say jokingly, but it's a reality that we must always look out for, particularly if you are representing investors. Now, if you are representing investors in startup funding, note that return of investment is more important than return on investment. Let me explain the difference. Return of investment means that if I put money into this business, I want to be sure that the business will still be alive. And if worst case scenario, I can get my basic money back. That just simply means that you want to be sure you're not putting your money into a scam. That once you put your money into it 2 years after they close shop and they disappear. So that's return of investment. Let me be sure my investment is safe. So return on investment is now when you get, profit out of the transaction. But the reason why I say this is because when people go into investment and are investors, sometimes the attraction of the return of investment or the possible return of investment is so much that it blinds them to obvious flaws in the business that will tell that this business is not going to survive. So you need to always try to leave the return of investment. And first of all, be sure that the business your advise your client to invest into is safe and that it will survive. And some of the things that Mr. Wolabi and Rafiat have already said are the guardians. So, you go into a business, already the HR department is in shambles. The co-founders are always fighting. There's no proper structure of corporate governance. It tells you that no matter how much return of investment that company promises you, that company is likely going to be a disaster. Because another thing you should notice is that once investors' money comes into a company, what was not a problem before suddenly become a problem. An employee who has been patiently there, who has been doing something and offering himself, suddenly believes that now this company has money. They have been owing me since they have not paid me, and it suddenly becomes troublesome. So that is why investors actually, or if you are advising investors, you must carefully do your due diligence, and you must go beyond what you call the hard due diligence. That's looking at the state of the agreement, the laws, and all that. To soft due diligence. Soft due diligence means that you have to look at the interpersonal relationship between the team members. So this is not law or anything. It's just about looking at human beings and seeing how they relate to each other. Is there mutual respect? Do these people look like they are, on the same team, ready to go the full length? Because the moment money comes in, co-founders who are friends will suddenly start fighting. You suddenly find that the company cannot move forward because that interpersonal dispute will suddenly ground the company. So these are things that you must do beyond just the books. It means you have to pay visits to the people, or even if it's Zoom meetings, you have to see the body language of the different people in the startup to be sure that if my client's money goes into this startup, I'm sure that this startup is going to be alive for us to even get a return on investment. But don't just allow their pitch that tells you that you can make 15% returns in the first year, 35% returns the next year. Don't allow that alone blind you. Look at other signals that show red flags and dangers, and be sure to advise your client properly. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Max. I would have wanted us to take a few questions, but then we are far short on time, and then there's still a class for us to hold by 5 p.m. for our mentees. So we want them to get some rest and prepare for that session. So before we just go, I want to say firstly, thank you to our mentors, to Ms. Refiat, to Mr. Olabi, and also to Mr. Max. But just before we go finally, right, we would like to take a quick picture of the mentees and the mentors in class for our social media postings, and then we can just rest a bit and prepare for the next class. So please, I would like to ask for our mentees to turn on their video cameras so that we can take a quick picture and then we can move on. Thank you, Precious. Thank you, Kehinde. Thank you, Imalbong. Thank you, Ediomo. Sorry if I didn't pronounce your name very well. Thank you, Mr. Chinedum. All right, so please just give me a minute. We'll be doing that in the next 1 minute. We'll be rounding up in the next 1 minute. All right, one more picture, sorry. All right, thank you, we are done. We're done. Thank you everyone for staying through to the end of this class. It was really, really nice hearing from our mentors. I hope you learned something, right? I did learn something. So please do well to pay attention to the posts, to the classes that will be shared, the links that will be shared on YouTube, so that you can always revisit in case if you missed out on anything. I would like to encourage us to stay true for the last class, right? The last class, we'll be posting the link, I think, when it's 30 minutes to the time, so that you can always attend and just gain the full package in that sense, right? We've started from the AFCFTA, we've talked about fundraising. Now we want to talk about getting the best jobs. And I'm sure that's a subject matter you will be very, very interested in. So please, I kindly crave your indulgence to be in attendance for the last class. Thank you once again to our mentors for your time, for your shared presentation. Thank you to the mentees that presented in class. Do please enjoy the rest of your afternoon. See you by 5 p.m. Take care, everyone.